Good afternoon, class. Welcome back. Today we're going to be learning about the story genre of fantasy. We'll also be reading a fantasy story today, but to make sure we're all on the same page, I want us to create a definition together about what fantasy is and what story elements it contains. So if you've ever read a fantasy story before or seen a movie or a TV show, what elements about fantasy make it a fantasy story? Yeah, okay, I'll write our answers up here on the board. Yeah, that's part of fantasy. Yeah. Any other ideas? Okay. Now that we have a couple up on the board, does this help anyone else sort of jog the memory about what fantasy might be? Yeah, do you want to add something? Okay. I think this is a really good working definition of what fantasy is and what elements it contains. This is something that we can come back and add to later on once we've read our story. So, our story today contains some new vocabulary words. For us to be successful reading this story, I want us to go over these words together as a group and come up with our definitions for them. Our first word is ache, or in the story it will come up as ached. So, looking at the picture in the slide, and also thinking about if you've ever heard this word before, what do we think ache or ached might mean? Take a second to think about it. Okay. Ache. Yeah, I like that definition. Anybody else want to add on to it? That's fine. I think this really works for ached. And thinking about ache and ached, do we think it is a noun, a verb, adjective? What type of word is it? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I have an example sentence up here saying, my tooth ached, so I went to the dentist. Right? Because it's in pain, it hurts, so we went to go get it fixed. What other sentences could we make with ache or ached? Any ideas? Yeah, that's a perfect use of ache. Anyone else? Very good. All right, our next word is concentrate. So again, look at our picture. Think if you've ever heard this word before. What might concentrate mean? Yeah. That's pretty close. I would say there are better words that have that definition. Can anybody help us out sort of to clear up what this definition means? Yeah. Right, so going off of our other friend's first answer, building on it, that is more what concentrate means, but I think we were on the right track all along. And is this word a verb, a noun, adjective? Yeah. Definitely. And so an example sentence is, it was so loud I couldn't concentrate on my reading. Again, they're trying to focus on something, but it's difficult because there's a distraction. Any other sentences? Let's come up with some other examples. Yeah, definitely works. And so in the interest of time, I'm going to skip a couple. We would do the vocab in the same way as the other ones. All right, now that we have a good understanding of the vocab and what fantasy means as a genre, we're going to be reading our story, which is titled Wolf. For our time while we're reading, we're going to take 5 minutes to read it by ourselves silently. While we're reading that, though, I want us to focus on our main comprehension question, which is, why did the wolf go to school? I also want us to be working on a table, a chart, that is in our workbook that is titled Fantasy versus Reality. So as you're reading it, write down a few things that you notice are part of the fantasy genre, and write down a few things in the story that seem to be based in reality. After we are done reading the 5 minutes, we're going to discuss, both the comprehension question and the things we found in fantasy and reality. I want us to have at least one thing from fantasy and one thing from reality that we're wanting to share with the group at the end of the time. Any questions about what we're going to be doing? Okay, we're going to flip to that page and start reading now. And so give them 5 minutes to read. Probably give a 2-minute warning when we're getting close, and a 1-minute warning. Then we'll come back and discuss. All right, class, it is time to discuss our answers to our questions. So the first one is, why did the wolf decide to go to school? So think back on our reading. What were some of the ideas we came up with? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else want to add on to that? Okay. Someone who hasn't raised their hands. There are a couple other reasons why Wolf didn't go to school. I would love to hear more ideas. Yes. Yeah, that definitely works. This is a great list. I think we covered the main points of why Wolf went to school. All right. Our next chart is the fantasy versus reality. And so I want to go around and we're each going to say one thing we found from fantasy, and then we'll each say one thing we found from reality. And then call on students, fill out the chart, move to the next item. Now we're going to be doing a partner activity. We're going to take 10 minutes this time, and I want us to read the story out loud between our partners, and then answer the following questions. For time's sake, I'm going to skip over the questions that we're reading. And then I'll give them 10 minutes. We'll come back, discuss the questions. Following that, just a quick discussion group activity. So now that we've read a fantasy story, and we know what makes fantasy different from reality, I want us to come together and discuss what are our opinions on fantasy as a story genre. Do we like it? Do we dislike it? Why or why not? So let's take a couple seconds to think about our opinion on fantasy, and we can write on the board things we like about fantasy and things we dislike about fantasy. And start calling on people, and then we'll end the class and have a great rest of our day.